What Tangazuta, Najumutushina Mazuta, Adisha Landel, Chumuti, Chusum Shivas. What the Najumutu in Hebron that was the Marbe, Chivichungo, Jungo, Tungo Mazimba, Dinga, Dinga Tungo Mazimba, and Chivichimi Lazimba to what they Tanachu, Maduba in the Autumn Duni.
This evening, we will be introducing the material called the Introduction to Buddhism. And if we look at Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment at the beginning of the text, it states that understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics. This is really the essence of the introduction to Buddhism, so the heart of an introduction to Buddhism. And what this stands for, or refers to, are the pathways, three pathways. The pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity, the pathways shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the pathways for beings of great capacity. So this really summarizes all Buddhism in that stanza by Lord Atisha, referring to those three pathways.
What that Jibu Chungo, Chungo, Tumo Laji, but what the Dendry Long, Marbe, Dendru Hata Me, Teno to Agubaina, and what the Chungo, Tumo Laji, but Nyanaji Wars, Teno Kari Arsana, Jandu Ta, and then Makiju, Chujin Kantu, so Matuba in the table Shada Jibaina, and then do Hal Chigger, Melchigres. What is one is a Marbe?
So beginning with the pathways that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, those pathways are pathways that lead to the higher realms of the gods and humans and so forth. So if one has a desire to achieve rebirth in the higher realms, or freedom from the lower realms, rebirth in the higher realms, then one engages in the practices which are the pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity. Those are the following practices. Going for refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Engaging in ethical behavior, which is an ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities. And if one transgresses one's ethics or engages in a negativity, then making sure to acknowledge the downfall or confess the downfall or confess the misdeed. So by relying or engaging in these practices, one has rebirth into the higher realms, and these are the pathways that are shared in common with beings of small capacity that achieve that result.
Oji ta chibi chungo de ta nga so do nga nga ban ju ne an ne ko la ta mi te zang tu ba yin de ge du nya ba ji ko sang lu chu chung ma de ma res ma ba ne ko la ta mi te zang tu ba yin na ya an ne do nga ji do nga ju do nga cha ban de ju do nga zu yo res ma ba den do nga ba bi de ba do nga ba bi de ba us do nga cha ma da ku ju cha ma de bon tu ma res Tetabi Lada Malajiba Yina, Chiga Nachi Dungeta, or Dunget Zumobu Yogaris Marbe, Kaza Dunget about the country about Tamatus Marbe, telling about you and you somebody ding, did a Tumongu, and you somebody who goes there. That quality Tajik in the Kazure, Tantan Lampa Vidambos, Lankar Gurusana. And then I do some business, 15 down, 20 maybe, Shenet Lado. What the Labas on Yalajivaina, then doing a Judajiva Pone, Taba Yunguris, Marbe. What is one thing, Marbe Taba?
So the practitioner of small capacity renounces or has a desire to definitely emerge from the lower realms of cyclic existence. But this is a very small way of thinking, just wanting to emerge from the suffering of the lower realms. So then the next level is the person of medium capacity. And these are the pathways that are called pathways shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And those are the pathways which lead to liberation or nirvana. In this case, one is looking to abandon not only the coarse forms of suffering found in the lower realms, but then the subtler forms of suffering found within cyclic existence, all of the different forms of suffering. There are many categories of suffering: the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of change, pervasive compounded suffering. So all of these types of suffering at their coarse and then subtle levels are acknowledged as types of suffering by the practitioner of medium capacity, and he or she wishes to definitely emerge from suffering altogether, and therefore emerge from cyclic existence, the suffering of cyclic existence. So in the teaching of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, Buddha stated the Four Noble Truths. He stated that this is the superior truth of suffering, this is the superior truth of origin, this is the superior truth of cessation, and this is the superior truth of path. So in this case, Buddha was referring to the superior truth of suffering, the various sufferings mentioned, the superior truth of origin, meaning that which is a cause of that suffering. So here we're looking at not only the coarse causes of suffering, but the subtle forms, causes of suffering that cause the subtle types of suffering. So the person of medium capacity is looking to be free from all of those even more subtle forms of negativity. So getting rid of the cause of those coarse and subtle negativities. And the way that this practitioner does so is by relying upon the path, which is the fourth noble truth. Through relying upon the path, which is the three higher trainings, the higher training in ethics, the higher training in concentration and wisdom, and specifically the concentration and wisdom is calm abiding, a union of calm abiding and special insight, which has as its object of observation emptiness. So through relying upon these three higher trainings, the practitioner of medium capacity is able to achieve a state of cessation that abandons the origin, which is the cause of suffering, and therefore abandons the suffering altogether. The pathway that is shared in common with beings of medium capacity would be that fourth noble truth, the pathway of the three higher trainings. And one then achieves liberation or cessation by engaging in that pathway. Decent.
What the Lama Nelson Level then what the Tenzin and then later Yomo the Dungan to the Pompe. Dajumbo to Inaya, T. Bashat Ponto, Marba, Timmy Dajumbo to the gay, Numo Ponsaber, Dungan, Ponsaber, T. Basha Pongo, Basha Mapomba Inta, and Sanji Naji, Tanji Chamber, Maris Marba, Tanji Chamber, Tanji Chamber, Sanji Tubala, and Numo Bashat Mongos, the Bombala, and Tibachin belong Lujan was Marba.
Lesson. So, by relying upon the practices of the three higher trainings, one is able to eradicate the grasping at true establishment. One is able to get rid of the origin, which are two categories, karma and afflictions. So one is able to eradicate those and the afflictive obstructions and achieve the state of foe destroyer. But by relying upon these practices alone, one is not able to get rid of the imprints of those afflictions, so the obstructions to omniscience. So a Hinayana, foe destroyer, does not have an all-knowing mind or is not omniscient because he or she still has these imprints of the afflictions, the imprints of the afflictive obstructions or the imprints of the afflictions. So in order to get rid of those imprints of the afflictions, one has to engage in the pathways for beings of great capacity. And by doing so, one can achieve an omniscient mind by ridding one's self of the imprints of the afflictions.
어떻게 바자도 본발은 장주주도 생제고르스 장주주도 생제발라 안에 생제 죽은가 상고르스 아디샤 용라데네 주네명아 뒤주고네 생제 최단 바바셔라 용라데네 다전야바지 오늘 생제 최도솔에 아버장고르스 말바.
That's it. So to get rid of those obstructions to omniscience, or the imprints of the afflictions, more literally, but synonymous, translator's note, it's necessary to also engage in bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And there are two causal practices for generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. One is a lineage passed down through Lord Atisha, which is called the 7-point cause and effect instruction for realizing the mind, or generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And the second is the lineage passed down from through Lord Shantideva, called the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. So these are causal practices to achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment.
What the Nyasalan Balatin, she did one Sajia, what the Tashi Judas Maraba.
So in dependence upon these practices, one's able to abandon the obstructions to omniscience and attain to Buddhahood.
다집이 중국도 도모라데 네다 도모라 줘레스 네다 도모라데 집이랑 줘레디요 알아서 말봐 근데 지디요 보리진에 치고 그래서 그 줄이 집어나시 레인지 치고 그래서 말봐.
So the teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity become a cause for the teachings that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So in dependence upon the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, the teachings that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity are produced. And in dependence upon the teachings that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity, the teachings for beings of great capacity are produced. So there is this cause and effect relationship, and they are stages. And these different capacities are stages that rely upon each other and have a cause and effect relationship with one another.
sentient tantric julan sanjig rig chawdiyo as marba sanjig rig chawdiyo as sanjig rig shosna nang azu eji sheba ta eji sheba de toma eji sheba ta eji sheba de ma ru bani de what the sanjig rig is what is marba eji sheba de sanjig raj wesawa dhamana lubo was sanjig eji sheba de eji sheba ta se namas marba sangage se namore se nalo shamata sadan odane moyo arete te manta yang chu chu den jeba ina ko se sama chano ro te naji nga zu yi sheba nalo ndo sha to kondo ta ote ba cha tu ngalo pa ya bo se ba ina ane yi sheba de taji cheba chano ya dun ro ya taba to ya odane ge se de ne ba yo se marbe.
All sentient beings can have the arisal of the pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity, and the pathways shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the pathways for beings of great capacity, because all sentient beings have Buddha potential or Buddha nature. The reason that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature is because all sentient beings possess a mental consciousness. And that mental consciousness itself is one reason, and the second is the lack of true establishment of that mental consciousness. So these are reasons that sentient beings all have Buddha potential. And in Asanga's levels of yogic deeds, we find the mental consciousness or mind compared to gold that is refined, that when it's initially mined or ored, no, I don't know. When it's initially harvested, whatever, I don't know the right word, I'm sorry. The gold then has to be purified and washed. It has dirt and so forth all over it, and then in it, its essence is the gold itself. And Asanga compares the mind to that gold that is defiled by or sullied by various contaminants such as the afflictions of attachment and hatred and so forth. So one has this mind, though, that is in the essence of purity, like that the gold has that essence of beauty. So the mind is defined by that which is in the nature of clear light and unsullied. And I recently saw another way of translating it. The mind is in the nature of clear light, and the other things are adventitious or are not in its nature. So the word adventitious is used, meaning it's not part of its nature. So the nature is clear light, and that those stains are something that are not part of its nature. So just explaining the definition in English terms sometimes, because there's different ways to translate it. So the mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied or unstained is the one we're going to go with right now. And so when we look at the definition of the mind there, we see that mind is like that gold that has the essence of purity. So we have the ability to achieve those three results of the rebirth into the higher realms. We can achieve rebirth, we can abandon cyclic existence and achieve the state of nirvana or liberation. We can achieve the state of complete Buddhahood because we possess this mental consciousness that has that potential. We have that Buddha potential.
What chu gecha mashiba ina dangazu lhata gzera tambuni bazubane kalaji tobul rotudos ku iji shibatel neba yozon role matu iji shibatel neba men rotu maris tene ane data rojan jeya me zoya tene na zoya rela zoya suncha dama zoya yabu jenanda duje karje bayina ku iji shibat neba iji shibul dos mar.
If we speak of things that are not religious, if we speak of the mind and its abilities, and we don't speak of it in terms of religion, we see that our ability to go through the various classes in the school system relies upon the mental consciousness. So it's necessary to have a mental consciousness to be able to go to school, to progress through the stages, to go to first grade, to go to second grade. It's necessary to have a mental consciousness if one wants to become a doctor or to make something such as medicine or an airplane or some kind of weapon. All of these things rely upon a mental consciousness or a mind. And we see that all of these things are results of the mental consciousness's ability. All of these different areas of potential are all because of the mind.
Never chipping says Marvel, Senjiraji Vesawa, Taman Lubo was Marvel. Taman Lubo and Yetaraji Nidesh, Julama. Taman Lubo, and sent the Ten was in business Javalama, ranking Angi, Senjide, so Marvel, could send the Yana to Kongina, could say Tumal what is one is a Marvel.
The Yana Gona say to
Sam could tumble, Tanzera tumble A, B, C, Lana, and Michigan Garden do. Tea Tamalia told Lana, she told Tea Tamatamo, the Rabbi Berda. Tangado Casse Lune, Demanita, Demajetan, Chibichundi Junzulan, the Lavaina who sent the neighbor yours. What is Jean? The young users.
Julama.
Julama, that Tamalabo, I need to need what the Marva.
Oh, okay.
Tamad Senjiraja, Tamana Lubos and Dabro.
We find this definition of the mind being in the nature of clear light, unsullied or unstained, in the sublime continuum by Lord Maitreya. So we find this information about the mind's nature in that text. And so that means that if we familiarize that mind again and again and again with information of some sort, then we become more and more intelligent or aware of what that information means. So then if we apply that to religious practice, and we look at the two truths and the Four Noble Truths, we're able to, by looking again and again and again at the details of those subjects, we're able to have a greater and greater understanding of those things, in the same way that we have a greater and greater understanding as we go through the school system, as we learn things, as we know more and more and more. The same potential exists relative to religious practice, where we can increase our abilities and understanding more and more and more in that same way through repeated, or Rinpoche just said, through doing it again and again and again. So through familiarizations, through repeated familiarization. So we have this ability to achieve and understand the small, medium, and great scopes, because of this mental consciousness that is in the nature of clear light, and it is unstained, or the stains are adventitious, or something like that is the other way to translate it.
단도 칸수메가 칸수부 근거를 생각해버렸어. 칸수부는 생상모스 사지고도 좀 말ပဲ칸수인데 수수어서나 생각해버렸어 말ပဲ. 생야가 되게 내송 야가 되게 들도도 좀 말했어. 누가 되게 내송 좀 말ပဲ.
So when Buddha was asked who or what created the three realms of cyclic existence, three realms are referring to the desire realm, form realm, and the formless realm, the Buddha answered that the mind does. A positive mind creates the lower realms of suffering, and, I'm sorry, let me fix that. A negative mind creates the lower realms of suffering, and a positive mind creates the higher realms of happiness. So the Buddha stated that the three realms are created by a mind.
다 줄로도 산 고알렌다 때문에 도와서 이슈바다 히두다 주시도 속에 근데 강송스라고 하면서 사이즈버스 말이야. 사이즈버스라고 도와 아주 남바고 생즈버스라고 도와서.
So this is the difference that we can find between Buddhism and some other religions. Some other religions state, such as Hinduism and Christianity and Judaism, that there is a creator God that creates these different realms, whereas Buddhism states that the mind creates the three realms of existence.
What that know what the Kasugure that 가서 든리랑도 타비랑도 어떠수 용알라 안는 가서 지와를 가마 여바다 심마 여바다 지와 가마 여바선도 마지 지와를 통마매 봐 심마 여바선도 마지 네 심마를 타매 봐 어떤 여바도 세고 말이야.
So in order to understand the teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, or which are the pathways to the higher realms, and the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, the pathways to liberation, it's necessary for us to understand previous and future lives. Understand that previous lives are beginningless, and future lives have no end.
다 저와 가마 여바도 가서 줄서 나는 가서 저와 가마 여든 가서 아무도 왔어 말이야. 안에 온종도 왔어 온종. 안에 가서 세번도 왔어. 세바 여든 세바도 세바 가마를 되는 용구로 마도 세바 마이메 세바래요 말이야. 온종도 온종 가마를 되는 용구 알았어. 안에 오버 말이야 오버. 오버도 좀 오버 가마를 되는 용구로 마도 오버 마이메 좀 오버래요 말이야. 안에 가서 저와 가마 여든 안에 온종은 제 임베제 and Sheba Jimbezer, Omba Jimbezer, what did you say to go but the same?
That's it. So, when we to establish previous lives, we look at three reasons that are given. First is the existence of the sense powers. The sense powers came from a previous sense power that came from a previous sense power. And then we establish beginningless sense powers. Sense power has always been created by sense power. Non-sense power can't create sense power. So therefore, we find sense power always being created by sense powers, and then we find beginningless sense power. So this is the first reason that establishes beginningless previous lives and then beginningless lives. The second is the breath, the breathing in and out. The breathing in and out came from previous breathing in and out that came from previous breathing in and out. There is no breathing in and out that's caused by non-breathing in and out. Breathing in and out is always caused by breathing in and out. So there's concordant here. And then when we find that, when we establish this, then that the breathing in and out is caused by previous, then we establish beginningless breathing in and out, and they're the second reason for the existence of previous lives. And then the third is the consciousness. This moment's consciousness came from a previous consciousness, it came from a previous consciousness, and there is no non-consciousness that has ever created this consciousness. It's always been created by a previous consciousness. Then we establish beginningless consciousness, and therefore this is the third reason that establishes previous lives or beginningless lives. So because we are the possessors of, so when we say, are there previous lives? Are the subject, are there previous lives? The answer is yes, there are previous lives. Because we are possessors of sense powers, because we are possessors of consciousness, because we are possessors of breathing in and out. Because we are possessors of these three things, we are possessors of previous lives and therefore possessors of beginningless lives. So a doubt may arise. Maybe the consciousness comes from the parent's consciousness. So there are four types of birth. There are birth from the womb, birth from an egg, birth from heat and moisture, and miraculous birth. So in speaking of a human being, this is birth from the womb. In the normal cases, birth from the womb. When one is born from the womb, there's consciousness there. So if we were to think that it's from the parent's consciousness, that the child's consciousness is from the parent's consciousness, then it would necessarily follow that the child would know what the parents know, necessarily. So all the things the parents know, the child would know, and vice versa. But it shows in that one can find that this isn't the case, that there are things the child knows the parents don't know, and the parents know that the child doesn't know. So there is a flaw in that argument, and that is that the child would necessarily know what the parent knows. And the consciousness of the child comes from a previous consciousness. And at the time of conception in the womb, at the previous moment, it was from the intermediate state and then the previous life. So this is the continuum of the consciousness and how it's created by previous consciousness. So it's looking in the case of the womb, it's from the previous consciousness being the intermediate state consciousness.
That number go to see that Chenrezig Chera Kibare and Chenrezig Church with the Yoris, or the 네 쉐바나 부구 쉐바드 가네 용도 아니 어보드 가네 용도 아니 오용도 가네 용도 체리게 퇴샤고 돌래 때나 간데 갈라고 하는 거죠 하고 말았어요.
Scientists, though, are very intelligent and have equipment to be able to analyze things. So what they assert by analyzing with their equipment, I don't know. So where do they say the breath comes from? Where do they say that the sense powers come from? Where do they say that the consciousness itself comes from? What science posits, I'm not really sure of. But they're very intelligent, and they have equipment to be able to analyze things like this.
다 남바고 어디 보고 시바데 바두 시바는 용거라서 바두 시바티 가만 용거. So in Buddhism, we state that the child's consciousness comes from the intermediate state consciousness that comes from the previous life's consciousness, and then we find a beginningless consciousness, beginningless birth. So this is, in Buddhism, what we establish. We establish a beginningless birth. Forgot something. Jason. So, and all sentient beings have in common this beginningless rebirth. Tuchena. 상가가 내주시면 사이코스 신선하고 많이 니 자이 기겐이 어떤 송자요아스 특별 주제자는 나를 거로데 땅다 그 좀 신선하고 많이 받아도 좀 말বে
The Sangha's levels of yogic deeds state that since all sentient beings have beginningless rebirth, then it necessarily follows upon analysis that all sentient beings are our mothers, are our fathers, or have been our... It's really are. You can translate it two ways. Have been, but more literally are. So I'm going to use our mothers, our fathers, our teachers, our brothers, our friends, enemies, neutrals. All sentient beings have beginningless lives, so all sentient beings have had these relationships with us. And we find this in the Sangha's levels of yogic deeds, where it says all sentient beings have been our mothers, our fathers, our teachers, our friends, our neutrals, our enemies. They've had all of these relationships with us.
다 저 shema 요르베스는 저 shema든 다 녀무 마보바이나 아니 저 하마들 뇌샤 요에서 천들 구이죠래 말스 내가 저 뇌샤 요지면은 shema이나 세셔마를 구이죠래 다 주는스 말베.
So whether or not there are future lives depends upon whether or not afflictions are present, and specifically attachment. If there is attachment present at the time of death, then one will necessarily take on a future rebirth. This is a sign of that future occurrence. By analyzing, one can see that if at the time, when one is old at the time of death, if there is still attachment, then one can say that one will definitely take on a rebirth, that this is a certainty, a sign of certainty that one will take on a rebirth if this attachment is present at the time of death.
어제 다들 저셔마 요소서 되는 가수거래 다들 저셔마들 가수거래 다 가서 먹어 주 말বে
Okay.
르질레 나버서 나게 나버지 이제 나버서 먹어 주들레 신이 총송 요아스 저어되게 되버들 녀와 용거는 딘 예다 용거래 은도로 용거스 저셔마를 어디 가서 저셔마 요에서 안에 내송지 년가 요아스 말বে 어디 내송 주도 가 어떤 제마도나 안에 녀와다 예다 돈을 진 동에 몸을 요구시를 해서 말이야. And then you should have said, New York Kelly, New York Kelly, and a garden, and the government.
So, our future lives experience depend upon our actions, and we have the 10 non-virtuous actions, and then their opposites, 10 virtues. So the 10 non-virtuous actions are 3 non-virtues of the body, killing, stealing, and adultery, 4 non-virtues of the speech, lying, harsh words, gossip, and divisive speech, and then 3 of the mind, covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong view. So these are the 10 non-virtuous activities, and they have various degrees relative to each one of them, so degrees of completion. The greatest degree of negativity creates rebirth into the hell realm. A medium degree of negativity creates rebirth into the hungry ghost realm, and a small degree of negativity creates rebirth into the animal realm. So this is, if one wishes to abandon the various forms of suffering, then one should abandon the causes of that suffering. So in the Christian tradition, we find the assertion that there are 2 future results. One can go to hell, to the hell realm, or one can go to heaven. So we find a very similar concept here of behavior and the results of one's behavior and so forth. So if one wishes to not have those negative results, then one should abandon the causes of the negative results, which are negativity.
다 가와주들 전에 조송도 치와들 할로 그래. 근데 하마이 말봐.
So then, if we look at the opposites, which are the 10 virtues, the 10 virtues also have degrees. So the greatest degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth into the God's realm. A medium degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth into the demigod's realm, and a small degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth into the human realm. And so this is how the 6 realms of cyclic existence are produced.
다 디바도 제바 있는 손도 그랬어. 어디 사지 손버스. 디발 샤다 지기나 디바간에 있는 다도 그랬어. 냐부터 저 손거는 샤다 제바 있나 마다브 디바요 말했어. 어디 가자 최저단 되는 참여가 나야 디바이신 아무마우스. 냐부터 저 손수나 참여가도 저 다도 그랬어. 어디 손지기도 손거 디발 샤다 제바 있나 다도 그랬어.
That's it. If one engages in misdeeds, this will produce the experience of suffering of the lower realms. But the Buddha has stated that one can purify these negativities. One can purify one's misdeeds. So if one engages in acknowledgement of one's downfalls, then it's possible to purify them. The Buddha has stated that there is no negativity so great that it cannot be purified. The Buddha stated that even the 5 heinous crimes of killing one's mother, killing one's father, killing an arhat, drawing blood from a Buddha, or dividing the Sangha can be purified by engaging in acknowledgement of downfalls and practices such as the 4 opponent powers. So there are 4 opponent powers. There are 4 opponent powers: the power of regret, the power of commitment, the power of antidote, and the power of basis. So there are 4 opponent powers. When we're speaking of acknowledgement of downfalls and purifying misdeeds, 4 opponent powers are a practice. So I just want to make sure that I'm making it clear in my translation, the bridge between the last translation and this one.
돈이구나 와도 디바다는 거스 말봐 너도 섬다 트리 바이 보다 버려도 수이 섬을 와도 Then she ran you to learn the Tibetan was Marva. Do the Samola Temple, then the Gara.
Tony
Gumbaji, do the Samola Temple.
Table Demba,
Santa, developed Nije,
Gula Demba,
goes to attention, Chobala Temple.
they drew.
What you true to what that. Not so what the Sunyana have one Tibetan was.
Less so. So if we can engage in practices which serve as an antidote, we find in Shantideva's Compendium of Trainings that when we go to the power of antidote within the four opponent powers, there are 6 specific antidotes. The first is dependence or reliance upon profound sutras. So we can recite sutras such as the 35 Buddhas of Confession, also called the Sutra of the Three Heaps, or recite the Heart Sutra or various other sutras. So by reciting sutras, relying upon sutras, one purifies misdeeds. So this is the first power of antidote, first example of power antidote. The second is interest in emptiness. So meditation upon emptiness itself becomes an antidote. Table Demba. I forgot. Reliance upon recitation. Let me just do those 2 last because they're kind of together. So dependence upon statues or images. So this is images or statues, making temples and so forth, constructing tanka statues, dependence upon statues, dependence upon making offerings and so forth. And the last 2, dependence upon names, and then dependence upon recitation. So dependence upon names is merely reciting the names of Buddhas. Dependence upon recitation means reciting the names as well as doing the practice associated with it, and mantra names.
That's the Bible, the student is about my other was on the bed or shelter to all the Shachalos. Sajin Domaina, about teaching the Batagris, and Sajik Jenda what the Tane.
So in the 35 Buddhas of Confession, just the first homage that's paid to Buddha Shakyamuni, to our teacher, the Bhagavan, the glorious victor, Buddha Shakyamuni, I pay homage. There's an exact quote you can find right in the 35 Buddhas, but it's a homage that's paid to Buddha Shakyamuni, the first Buddha, and homage to the 35 Buddhas. And it's stated in the commentaries that 10,000 eons of negativity are purified by stating this homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, this one line.
What the Tibetago is the tongue also the Shinuk did on Hama we were. Send them, but the Tibetago. What to change is. And Judici down to the Zonga Tambaina, Debatan was Marba, Dajidan Jibon, High to Gal and Dayujin, what an Hajibone, Hardabaina, Devatemba. Then Magumba Jit and Hardabaina, Selatema Injiro.
So we can engage in the 2 powers of antidote, the power of recitation, or reliance upon names, by reciting the mantras we find in our prayer book here. We have the page of different mantras in the prayer book, and we can recite those mantras, or any mantras that we find in the 4 classes of Tantra. And if we are just reciting the names themselves, the mantras themselves, without any kind of practice, just the mantra, then this becomes reliance upon names. If we engage in the practice where we imagine that there is a lotus and a moon disk and a syllable and a circumambulation of a mantra garland and so forth, while we're doing a deity yoga practice and reciting the mantra, then this becomes dependence upon recitation. So just the names, the mantra alone is dependence upon names. If we do the practice associated with the mantra while we're reciting the mantra, then it becomes reliance upon or dependence upon recitation.
That Deva Tabar is what is Parents in the Yosun waters, Sue Debatabaras, Tibaina, Angul Mala, Sanji Shijukula, Angul Mala, Senior Lubata Chene, Guja to Kujuko Severes, Sanji Danjina, Sanji Kuliabatos Danger, good the wound Debatana, the Genji the New Dajum waters.
So, who was able to purify his or her misdeeds? And we find many examples in Scripture, and we find one specific example of Angumala, who was given the wrong instruction by a bad spiritual teacher and told to kill. And he killed 990, told to kill 1,000. He killed 999 people, and then he met with the Buddha. And the Buddha taught Angumala the 4 opponent powers. And Angumala would normally had to have had the suffering as a result of the negativity of the killing that he engaged in. But by engaging in the powerful practice of the 4 opponent powers, Angumala was able to, in that lifetime, achieve the state of foe destroyer. That's it.
Cha somba del zub debi ina nasa mena watin tin nyelan tin khala pita sa rilza chuja watin ke nyelan ya batan ni ya sen odule sen jimdu na de debat habta yin son waris.
There are signs we will recognize in our dreams if we have purified our misdeeds. If we are healthy or well, mentally and physically, so the word is well or healthy, but it's referring to a mental wellness and a physical wellness, just as a translator's note. So if we are well or healthy, then we can analyze our dreams. And there are 3 stages during our sleep of dreaming. We don't pay attention to the first or second part of our sleep state. We pay attention to the 3rd stage, which is the stage right before we wake up, the last stage of our sleep. And here, if we are well, we can analyze what type of dreams we're having. If we have dreams that we are eating wonderful food, or climbing a mountaintop, or washing, or bathing, or if we just wake up and have a generally pleasant feeling in our mind, we feel like we had really a nice sleep, we just feel good, then this is a sign that there's been a purification of our misdeeds, or of some misdeed. Because we have accumulated misdeeds, and misdeeds lead to suffering, and we don't like suffering, then we should probably abandon our misdeeds by engaging in a practice that, such as the 4 opponent powers, so that we don't have to experience the suffering of them. The Detsgu Rinpoche. So we are going to take a 5. We find that the pathways that lead to the pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity that lead to the higher realms, and the pathways that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity that lead to liberation, and the pathways for great capacities have a cause and effect relationship with one another. The Ithaca stated that understand that there are persons of 3 capacities, small, middling, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics. So this is not something that Lord Ithaca created. This is something that comes from Lord Buddha himself. So we find in the sutra teachings the same assertion that there is a cause and effect relationship between the different pathways or scopes. So in the current section that we're dealing with right now, we find the quote from the sutra that supports the fact that the stages have a cause and effect relationship with one another. So the sutra that we find cited here, and where we do find the cause and effect relationships with the, relative to pathways, is called the Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula. In Sanskrit, it's the Dharani Svara Raja Paricha. So it's in the pronouncements of Lord Buddha section. So we can find this text here in the collection that we have. So this is where we find this assertion that it is the same as Atisha's. So here on page 140 in the English text, we find where the Lama Tsongkhapa shows the source of the instruction in the sutras. So it says, the Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula uses the example of a skillful jeweler gradually refining a jewel in order to illustrate the need to guide the student's mind in stages. Wary of being verbose, I have not cited it in full here. Lama Tsongkhapa is stating that if he were to include the information about that's found in the Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula, that it would make the text incredibly long if he included that additional information. So he's going to leave it out. But if we look at Panchen Sanandrapa's general meaning of perfection, we find the explanation of it in there. So we will utilize that to give the explanation of this. That's this shit. I'm going
and then long sugar Swaji Ka ina, long sugar in Michab, long sugar in the Swaji Ka in Michab, long sugar. Long sugar mature what is that? Long sugar in a Kazi and Eoras. No the Gondelis on the Colosong Naja, Colodambo, Papa, Tamason. Zonja Onji Jabi, she will do she will Rembason Najas, what did Tanda what they made. Zonja Onji Jabi, she will Zonja Onji Jabas Kanza Juota, the Sanji the Shu, and the Sanji is on Jabandotele, Zonja Onji Jabi, she windows. Tell the person Jabas, person. But not never looking around, never Tunta, Tun never landed Dola Juota. The Shamata Mamugo Jirota, and never look about the gay, do the Akeon. Then Tsai Cornel Bon, and then to Tata Jabe blanket in the shoes. Down with the Marva.
Okay.
Natasha Jasa.
Less so.
What the she was, down with J.
Less so.
That name but the senior because in Yahoo was Yahoo. 다 보시 냐 주셔 추요로 전올 본 너부터 시대 당고스 니바드레스 somba bhenshi bi kuwasa ya to munchu no bon ne samu de shiba ina an no bi da bachano.
Okay. Leso. Decent. So there are two different turnings of the wheel of Dharma. There are the scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma and the realizational turning of the wheel of Dharma. So in Varanasi, were the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, and then there was the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. The actual pronouncements of Lord Buddha, if it is Buddha's speech, it is necessarily a scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma. The Sanjay Kayena, Lunji Demba Yamicha. No, Lunji Demba Yena.
Buddha speech is Buddha speech in the Kazi New Year's. Long Chugoro, Buddha speech is no long Chugumarba. Long Chugje. Tela in Ni, no to Gondela Zombi, Colosonjana. Tambache. Niba de Zonjo Onju Jabish, Vendole Jubi, Rembason Janajas, Nishan do Beijing.
So the scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma has two categories: the sutra turning of the wheel, and then the three specific turnings of the wheel. So this Questions of the King Dharyanashvara Sutra would fall under the scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma, and this was requested by a king, the questions that a king had for Lord Buddha, and Lord Buddha then answered these questions in the form of this teaching. So this is a sutra teaching that falls under the scriptural doctrine because it is a Buddha's pronouncement, so it's necessarily a Lungdemba, scriptural truth, or Lungachuku, scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma. Here there is a use of three examples that are used in this specific text that compares the cleansing of one's mind to a jewel or cleaning a jewel. So in the Lama Tsongkhapa's text, it says it uses the example of a skillful jeweler gradually refining a jewel in order to illustrate the need to guide the student's mind in stages. So in the sutra, which is the Questions of the King Dharyanashvara Sutra, I'm going to just use this. What is it? The Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula. So in the Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula, we find three examples that are given. So when a jeweler first harvests a jewel, or first takes an unpolished jewel from a jewel mine, it has sand on it and it's dirty. So first part of the process is taking a salt water and washing the jewel with salt water, and then wiping it with a cloth made of hair. So first you take salt water and wash this jewel, the jeweler does, and then wipes it with a cloth made with hair. And then this doesn't cause it to become brilliant enough. So the next stage is to use a solution that is fish water that fish have been in. So fish water, literally. And then one washes the jewel with this fish water, strong solution, which is fish water, and then rubs it with nipa, then re yurube.
Nipa the resina is simtaka rena jishi go nyakon bon.
Okay, and then wipes. I was just asking if there was a cloth involved in the second. So then washes it with this fish solution, this fish water, and then wipes it with a cloth. So this is the second phase of a jeweler trying to make an unpolished jewel into a jewel that doesn't have any defilements or anything. So then the next example is that then the the jeweler uses quicksilver, uses a silver water, and then wipes it with a very, very soft cloth afterwards. So uses a silver water solution and then wipes it with a very, very soft cloth. So this example is given in the Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula to show how the mind is cleansed in stages, or how the mind is guided in stages. And it's this skillful jeweler gradually refining a jewel, like one is gradually refining one's mind. Tamshe.
다 된다를 잡아 있는 안는 가서 생당 안는 가서 너 이제 너무 남으래서 말봐 너무 남으래요 가서 이지 받아 너무 남지 안테 텔레 안는 너블 사단 대동 거도요 대초에 네 제바 담보데 집 중국도 통문화 돼서 말봐 집 중국도 통문 맞다바다 등행와다 다음에부터 생고르스 제바 담비고서 맞다바다 등행와다 또 도스테 안는 내용 상바치 안는 집이 중요라 저르다 뭐주 투지 강도주도송 디바샤다지야 어디서 말봐 제가 담비 주미지 강세다
Then mi taba dunyawa tonwa de dameba. Dene gari tsamodandu dene neba jon tambo.
다 담보 집이 중국이 다 뭐가 주봉 줄이송야 디바샤다지야 저르도 말봐
Lasso.
어디 집 렘바 담비 주미지 강세다 나송 지지게 디바도 샤다지야 어디서 말봐 다때야 제바니비 거서 되네 세너비고 어디 저들 되네 집은디도 통을란 땡고 말봐
미타바.
나반주 나주 추진제 안에 동반이다 참마매바다 나타 구동도 된디서 말봐
Lasso.
눈이는 비시네 하동 어디고 말봐 어디서 된디서 와다
So then, this initial, the jewel, the mind, we all possess a mental consciousness, and this mind is like a jewel that needs to be refined. So the jewel has dirt and defilements. So the jewel, which is our mind in this case, is refined by engaging in practices. So initially one refines it by engaging in the pathways that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, and by engaging in the ethics, which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, engaging in refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and then acknowledging one's downfalls. And then also having a renunciation or desire to definitely emerge from the suffering of the lower realms of cyclic existence. So one has a renunciation for the lower realms. So then first, then this is what happens. And then the person recognizes the different forms of the natures of existence, as far as the truth of impermanence, the truth of suffering, the truth of emptiness, the truth of selflessness, and so forth. So then the practitioner learns of these things and then becomes disenchanted with cyclic existence. So initially the sentient being enjoys the worldly pleasures and cyclic existence, and then recognizes the suffering, impermanence, and the emptiness and selflessness and so forth, and the impurity and unpleasantness, and then wishes to emerge from that, and wishes to achieve the state of liberation. So then, through engaging in a union of calm abiding and special insight, one is able to start to understand the mode of existence, and understand the discourses on emptiness and signlessness and wishlessness, and then at that point, these are the teachings or pathways that are shared in common with with beings of medium capacity. So it's the student is brought from the stage of renouncing the lower realms of cyclic existence and the practices which allow one to do so, then recognizing the negativities or downfalls of cyclic existence through the understanding of impermanence, through the understanding of impermanence, impurity, impermanence, unpleasantness, suffering, and selflessness or emptiness, and then wishes to be liberated from that. And one is liberated by engaging in the pathway shared in common with beings of medium capacity, which are the 3 higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom, and really this union of calm abiding and special insight. In the quote, it talks about Tathagata, he causes them to understand the Tathagata's own mode of discourse through discourse on emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. So this is the next mode. The next mode. Jin Lanjirim Tomo Lanjirim Lasa.
Tamade Rijibo. But Dejin to Rijibo, Dejin to us, Dejin Shibe, Yonsu Madabe, CJ Kanchen, and Rimba Tambi Gozo, and the Madaba ten Wurus, doing him 10 Wurus. Da meba kazak da raba raba and the matama ten wures what the demba ina and the nganju samba nasu dogen neba juin nganju samba chiwejero tanje koala gai shenje joan zete pabi chu doalan ze do so de chungdo tongla de zamarbe tomatrendo rijibo dejin dos Rijibu Tejin to Tejin Shibi Yonsu Madabe Sinji Kanchen and the Carden Chibu Chung cause Carden Warsana, Madaba ten Wures, doing him at 10 Wures, Dameba, Damet Rabat in Rapa.
Okay,
Matawa. Matawa Sita, Mata Dunga Tua Dame. Matawas, Le Matawas, Le Marbe.
Contaminated.
Dunga Pumut Matawas.
Then the Jipu Chungo.
Then the Jipu Chungo to Tumula, Rebajago, Tambu Marbe, Reba Tambi Ju Mejilan, Reba Tambi Ju Mejilan, do goes to the door. Rijibu Tejin doors, Tejin Yonsu Madabe, CJ Kanchen, and the Carden of Reba Tambi Gozo, Jibu Chungo to Tumula, Carden Gosana, Madaba 10 Wures, doing him 10 Wures, and then Da Meba 10 Wures, Mazama 10. And then I saw doing it about you, Nanu Samba.
That's so.
Chibu Chungo is Chungo.
That's so.
Rimba Tambi Ju Magic Lans at the rock. What the Chungo to one larger things.
So now going directly to the the questions of the Royal Lord of Formula, which is quoted in the general meaning of perfection. It says, just so one thus gone understands the impure nature of all sentient beings. So the one thus gone understands the impure nature of all sentient beings. So he understands the impure nature of all sentient beings, and he causes sentient beings who enjoy or desire cyclic existence to rethink it, to rethink it, or to stop thinking in this way, to be disquieted through a disquieting discourse. And what disquieting discourse is, what quiets or stops this thinking, of which enjoys cyclic existence, is the discourse on impermanence, suffering, selflessness, and contamination, or the contaminated. So impermanent, contamination, selflessness, and suffering, and so forth. So here, then it says he introduces them to the disciplinary practices of the superiors. So here, the first level, which are the teachings shared in common, the pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity, are explained in that stanza there, where it speaks of it, and this is referring to it in a coarse way. So when it's speaking of disquieting discourse on impermanence and selflessness and so forth. This is the course form that initially the student understands, and then as an initial practice. And this is the initial stage that is shared in common with beings of small capacity. So that's where in the sutra it refers to the small scope. So in the Atisha's lamp, it says, understand persons of three capacities: small, middling, great. The small, that small is what is being referred to here in this section on the from the Questions of the King Sutra.
jo ngon debo tapana ngaso ngarutu ngoro ngomarbe ngaso pama yoromada pada jo marbe ana ngaso debu ngoro ngaso dabatu tonate tombas ana chama mebase jo debo maruba debu dem haba mebase debu debo maruba o to se ten gores
Tomani ngatsu demba madrupa, sema mepa ngatsu ju demba madrupa, mupa shema
debu debo maruba. Okay. Ju mo debo maruba, ju debo maruba, debu debo maruba la maybe shene dal hatu.
Okay.
Then chutin la patu yungo jerada. Dino tomola de
So then the next section deals with the stages of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and deals with the nature of reality. And it says, one thus gone doesn't stop his efforts with just this. He causes them to understand the Tathagata's own mode of discourse through discourse on emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. So here, emptiness here is referring to the empty, the lack of true establishment of one's lack of true establishment. And then the signlessness refers to the lack of true establishment of our cause. And wishlessness refers to the lack of true establishment of the result. So the emptiness is lack of true establishment, signlessness is lack of true establishment of the cause, and wishlessness is lack of true establishment of the result. So if we look at cause and effect, our parents are our cause, and we are the result. So the signlessness is the lack of true establishment of the cause of us, our parents, and we are a result, and this would be the lack of true establishment of the result of us, result being the wishlessness. So here it speaks of emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness, and this is what it's referring to. Emptiness is nga demo madrupa, nge ju demo madrupa, nge demo madrupa. Okay.
That ju demo madrupa, ngo demo madrupa, maybe shene dal hatung su ten wo.
Okay. Two channel. So then we rely upon a union of calm abiding and special insight that utilizes this lack of true establishment of cause, lack of true establishment of being, lack of true establishment of result. So the mode of subsistence, the mode of lack of true establishment. By analyzing this with a calm abiding and special insight, we're able to then transcend, able to transcend and be liberated. So then we are in this section dealing then with the three higher trainings, the higher training in ethics, concentration, and wisdom, and specifically a Geshe Lharampa, a calm abiding and special insight that has as its object of observation the emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. So when I verified, I said, looking at it in a way, I am not truly established, my cause is not truly established, my effect is not truly established.
Da songpa terendo, da zangji chomba doayam, te yogo to, shima dobi kulu tang, Chenmo tu khulu dan khosong yongsu tabi tang je rajin ha tu juje je sentient da tijin shibi yulan juban ze toz shoba juji tijin shibi chuni toba ne lana mebe yönten shi jodo shi sumba teremu de
Leso.
chibi lanji
Leso.
chibi lang
Leso.
ane adisha yongla den juni benga du jugun sen shibi tu tan shawala yongla den dajin yaba ji gun tu wadu de ka to le gu mu
So the next deals with the pathways for beings of great capacity. And this needs bodhicitta. That pathway requires bodhicitta. And one can achieve bodhicitta by relying upon the practices passed down from Lord Atisha, the 7-point cause and effect for realizing bodhicitta, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or the practices passed down from Lord Shantideva, equalizing and exchanging self with others. So here it says, however, Tathagata does not cease with efforts with just that. He leads those sentient beings to the land of the Buddha through discourse on the irreversible wheel, the cultivation of the union of method and wisdom, the discourse on the complete purification of the 3 spheres of the action, agent, and object. So here, the union of method and wisdom, and here referring to the need for the bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So this is the 3rd level, referring to the pathways for beings of great capacity.
ane remba tambi koso ane mataba dungwa tongwa dame matsawa de tenjule dame ba sayate kaza dame rabare ta matsawa de temba tise ane deba magwa ane jibu chungu kaze pon totu ji wo de tanu ge marbe chai kwan bone zai re shiba na ji ge ane ne so phe ji ge ju deba to tanu ge ro tambu de marbe Lancer said. Taniba, Sage be called Bondes, not a good theatre, not a good, not a good tomb, some member, or the ten dule, tene casure. That not a good song, maybe she net a laton, and to reach lava, until a tene, then doing a puppy demo, then a good puppy demo, do go to the pond. Pondo is marbe, what the Teme land marbe.
Lesser.
Send a big cause that is Nakunbo.
Yaku, Dene? No.
That's about they would Shimudu Kulitan Seate and then Munchun Bon, Munchun Bon, the Tabanaji Dene, Yomu Pashatus Nebude Marbe, Shimudu Kulitan.
Okay. So. The one is the afflictions. So the mind itself is like a wish-granting jewel, but it is corroded or sullied by the afflictions and misdeeds and so forth. So the Buddha stated that compounded phenomenon are impermanent, all contaminated phenomena are suffering, all phenomena are selfless and empty. So all these things were stated by the Buddha. So the Buddha leads sentient beings through stages of awareness to be able to achieve various results according to their capacities. So at the first level, the Buddha taught the pathways that lead to the higher realms. So through relying upon the practices, one is able to abandon the lower realms of cyclic existence. And in this quote from the Questions of the King Sutra, it's compared to the initial process a jeweler uses when he or she is refining a stone. So first this salt water is used and then rubbed down with a hair cloth. And this is similar to the pathways for beings of small capacity that allow one to abandon the propelling karma that gives rise to rebirth into the lower realms. So this first process is compared to the saltwater washing of a jewel. The next process, one recognizes the downfalls of all of cyclic existence and then engages in a practice of the three higher trainings, the higher training in ethics, a concentration in wisdom, and specifically that concentration in wisdom being a calm abiding and special insight. And by doing so, he or she is able to abandon the origin of suffering. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering, this is the superior truth of origin. By practicing the three higher trainings, one is able to abandon the superior truth of origin, the cause of suffering, the karma and the afflictions that cause suffering. So this is compared to the refining of a jewel using a fish water solution and then wiping it off with a cloth. So the second stage of refining of a jewel. So the refining of our mind, where we get rid of the afflictive obstructions through practicing the higher trainings. So this is the second part. The last part, when we are comparing the cleansing of one's mind to the refining of a jewel, is where one engages in this union of method and wisdom, engages in the pathways of the great scope, which allow the imprints of the afflictions to be abandoned. So the obstructions to omniscience are abandoned through the practice of this union of method and wisdom, utilizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and practicing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And this, in the Questions for the King's Sutra, is compared to the silver water, utilizing silver water to cleanse the jewel, and then washing it with a very soft cloth. And this is the final stage of the process of polishing a stone, whereas in this case, the final stage of removing even the imprints of the afflictions of the mind. So this is how the stages are exhibited in the sutra, specifically the Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula Sutra, where we find the comparison to the refining or cleansing of a jewel that a jeweler does after harvesting it.
아디샤게 총원들도 주집어서 뜻은 준대레스 총원데 딩랑교 딩 도모나 침비랑교레스 제이마콘 가바요스 종종오시 잡이 놀레 쉐비 레바 담비 주메지 라지부 총원도 도모나드레스 니바 트지글라든 딩도 도모나데 야고레스 쳔무도 콜리타스 레바 sombi 라드 집이 라드레스
Okay, so shows the understand persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great, and shows how states there's a cause and effect relationship, that in dependence upon the teachings for beings of small capacity, the teachings, the pathways for beings of small capacity, the pathways for beings of medium capacity are created, and in dependence upon the pathways for beings of medium capacity, the pathways for beings of great capacity are created, are realized, if you will, are created. So these have cause and effect relationship with one another, and this is what Atisha asserts, that these are stages. And then we find that Atisha has source material, and that's the actual sutra. And the sutra is the sutra Questions of the Royal Lord of Formula, where it shows the stages of the mind being cleansed at the beginning, middle, and end. So the first stage of the cleansing with the salt water and the hair cloth, and then the second stage of the cleansing with the fish water and a cloth, and then the third stage of the cleansing with the silver water and a very soft cloth. So comparing, using this analogy of stages to the small, medium, and great scope stages.
네, 렌시 tenwa ko song shabat wat jibares ane 렌시 tenwa ro
Less so.
ngomlo ru je jans tomo ngoba tu chus de chebe chungo do tomo la de marbe ngo tu la tomo ngoba tu chu shene nga ba leba se de ndi do tomo la de marbe shene tomo ngoba tu chu chebe chungo do tomo la je shene nga ba leba nga jong se de ndi do tomo la je 가시 뭐바 토토네 리징에 발레바 용송도 타 티바 쳔빌란데 만바 어떤 손도다 종종 어주제비 돌레주비 레바 담비 주메제라 니비 트레제라 손베 자치 란세하다 어떤 같이 버레스 아디샤 종원데도 지부송도 시사하다 안에 레첸테와도 손다 종종 어주제비 용도 같이 버레스
Bene the Rinchen Chenwa the Jipu Chembu Kabiore.
Rinchen Chenwandere doa. Tomongoba tu chuse at ngo tu chuje. Chongdo tomona.
Lesso.
Shene ngeba leban jongsong du ngele teme rido tomona mara. Kaashe ngaba to tone so ngoto hadami tano tuza sona rinje de tole Atisha jongla junde shachu senje Atisha jongla junde manga du gun senje bitu ta paba shwala jongla dajin yabaji gun senje bitu do yongere son de marbe
Ale
rinjinga balle bons
Ale the jipa dan nipa kakare nipa din jipa ale. Okay. So then in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, we find stages mentioned there as well. It says, Nagarjuna also said to guide students in stages through the paths of high status and certain goodness. So initially there are teachings on high status, referring to the teachings, pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity, those teachings, which lead to the higher realms. It says, then come the teachings on certain goodness, so the teachings for beings of medium capacity, the pathways which lead to liberation and so forth. For having obtained high status, you gradually reach certain goodness. So here, if you have high status, a higher realm rebirth, then you're able to engage in the practices like bodhicitta, and the practices passed down from Lord Atisha of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing bodhicitta, and the teachings passed down from Shantideva for the equalizing and exchanging self with others practices. So having obtained high status, one can do those practices. It says you gradually reach certain goodness, and here this is the teachings for beings of great capacity. So gradually reaching this certain goodness, I was asking because obviously it's certain, and it says the two same words here, and what the distinction was. But Rinpoche is saying that the fourth line, I'd have to look at the Tibetan and do like this real fast thing right now. But the fourth line refers to the great capacity teachings. Just in English, we have this. It looks all similar in the text if you're following on the text.
다들 이제 아디장을 총무대도 주체보송도 시바샤도 준대레스. 전나지 종종 어시 제비 윈돌레 좀 렘바송 자다다 지바레스.
Lesso.
안에 레시엔테와를 송송도 어떻게 지바레스. 어디서 돌마 상가다 안 장다 그것도 같이 어디 뭐다 다 제말 야저 지마라.
So then Lama Tsongkhapa says that Atisha states that these are stages, the cause and effect relationship between the small and medium, and then the great. And then it shows that in the sutra, in the questions of the Royal Lord of Formula, that there are stages of the initial, the middling, and the vast stages. So then in that sutra we find those examples, and then we find stages mentioned in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, where it states that the students are led in various stages. And then later on in the text we'll find quotes from Masanga and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti. So we find all of these points that are made, supported by all of this lineage of masters. It's all the same information. And in the future, later, we'll go over this, all of the rest of this supporting material that shows the stages of instruction. We're out of time. So thank you very much. And as always, I apologize for anything that was unclear or any mistranslation. This is all very, complex material. When we get into some of this is the text that the monks study in the monastery. What we're learning right now, what Rinpoche is teaching, is directly out of the Parshin Shitun, which is the text that the monks use to study Prajnaparamita in Drepung. So this is the same exact book that a monk would study Prajnaparamita with, that we're getting this information from, which Rinpoche cites a lot, because Panchen Son Andrapa is the textbook writer for Drepung Lobsang Monastery. So when you hear Rinpoche mention Panchen Son Andrapa, that's the textbook writer for Drepung, as well as Ganden Shartse, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, but Drepung Lobsang certainly. So we're very, very fortunate. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lobsang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tutuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Derula. Sheda Sabudu Tuchena.